And now just going to move on quickly to COVID. So you're still the chief exec, just...
Yes. Hanging on.
Hanging on. Tell us, what was your sort of mindset when you started to realise the severity of it, and then what did you do after that?
Well, I mean, COVID, as you're maybe never too old to learn, but holy moly, have we had to do some learning in this last 6 months. So, watched the news January, February, and kind of thought, well, it'll never happen to us, I think, as most people did. Come March time, as we then started to flirt with lockdown, it became very, very clear at that point we might need to shut down for a couple of weeks and maybe 3 weeks, and how might that impact customers? And then clearly it just became turbocharged on the downside. And in the very early days, avoid unnecessary journeys, work from home if you can. It's your civic duty not to use public transport. So all of our customers overnight saw revenue decline of anywhere up to 80%. So they faced their own existential crisis. What do? They defer orders, they cancel orders, and overnight we went from a trajectory of £750 million of turnover and record profit to will we survive? I mean, that was really scary. As a chief executive, normally, if market X is up and market Y is down, or product X up and product Y is down, you've got a most likely outcome that you will hit your targets, you will hit your numbers, give or take. So we then pretty much went from overnight. Thankfully, the furlough scheme was implemented, so that allowed us for people to stay at home and at least get, for the most part, get a big chunk of their wages. But we then thought, holy moly, our customers are knackered. How are we going to resolve this? So we started to engage with government, so Department for Transport, Baroness Veer, Grant Shapps, the Transport Minister, Andrew Gilligan, the Prime Minister's advisor on transport and so on, to say, guys, public transport, existential service, every town and every city, public transport is a spinal cord. Kids don't have an alternative, old people don't have an alternative, and many people in between don't have an alternative. You want to address congestion, you want to address air quality, we can do that, we can fix that. We've invested in all these best-in-class zero emissions and products. Come on, because our customers aren't going to order any buses because, frankly, they don't know if they're going to exist. They're getting a little bit of government support, but not enough to invest. 6 months on, we've taken advantage of the furlough, which ends at the end of next month. North America's dodged away on a slower burn, but it's government funded. Asia Pacific's dodged away because China, Hong Kong, Singapore, they grabbed it quickly. So, there's been some delays there, but there's not been a reduction in demand. The UK's been cataclysmic. So, and frankly, the concern that we have is unless government fund, and Boris Johnson announced a £5 billion investment in green transportation. We expected at least half of that towards green buses, the rest towards sort of cycling and walking and so on. But time's our enemy now, right? We've eked out the meagre order book that we have, but unless something gives in the coming weeks, we're going to be in a horrible place. So I should have finished up in May. I agreed to stay until September. We have a brilliant guy running the business who was promoted from within and a beneficiary of some of the great programs that we put in place. So he's walking and talking, the business. But his name's Paul Davis. He's got a really, really tough job because there's never a week gone by that I haven't wrote to everybody, our key suppliers, all of our employees. Paul's continued to do that. We know that extended furlough, mental health, connectivity, social beings, keeping up with your workmates, we know it's been incredibly, incredibly difficult, for lots of people. The first week or two was like an extended holiday. I'll get the grass cut, I'll emulsion the living room ceiling or whatever. But since then it's just got tougher and tougher and tougher. I am now a convert to Zoom and to Teams and so on. And there have been some fantastic technologies that we've been able to use that are better than nothing. But complex situations and human beings being social creatures, there's still no substitute for, and certainly with customers and those maybe that you have a slightly more distant relationship, COVID has certainly tested some of those relationships a bit more. So, public transport is not, actually in some ways, not dislike the airline industry, which has been absolutely savaged. Yeah. But the airline industry, at least, is mostly discretionary journeys. You can choose not to take a holiday, or you can choose not to take a business trip. But public transport must survive. It must, because it's maybe not quite as important as education or social work or whatever, but it provides a really, really essential service to millions of people every day.
You mentioned that your order books, so is getting more and more reduced. How do you resolve that? You mentioned government. You mentioned a few other things like.
Well, the reality is you can only play the hand that you're dealt.
Yeah.
So the things that you control. So, for example, the furlough scheme has been hugely beneficial. So you go talk to your customers and say, can you please take your buses as late as possible so that we can maximise the furlough for as long as possible and keep key people in employment for as long as possible. Yeah. Most customers will work with you on that. Yeah. You can go and look at the income streams that are less impacted, like North America, like our aftermarket parts business, like our Asia business, and go and wring out the dishcloth and make sure you're all over everything there and try and find a bit of an offset to the UK. Beyond that, then it's really down to either public transport getting back to 90 or 100%, operating companies making money and investing in capital equipment, or government bridging the gap. And the UK is made up of really 3 bus manufacturers, and we're all brilliant at double decks. If those businesses of that industry cease to exist, there's no plan B. There's no European manufacturer, and the volumes are so low, right? And the product is so bespoke that none of the big Europeans will get excited about it. So double decks are a key fabric of public transport in the UK, as are minibuses, for feeder routes and stuff like that. So there needs to be a way through this. So I think the team at ADL, and with the competition as well, have done everything in their power to control the things that they have some influence over to 3 decimal places. Yeah. I really do. But as we talked about luck earlier, sometimes luck plays a part on the plus side. And certainly with COVID, certainly on the negative side. I wish I'd been in Amazon or Ocado or Netflix or Facebook or Zoom or some other businesses where either working from home or dining at home or logistics. But some businesses have been whacked way harder than others. Yeah. Airline industry one, certainly our business, public transport. I've spoken more about buses and coaches, but look at tourism. No one's come to the UK this year. So coaches have hardly turned a wheel. So at least if you have a bus business, the government is still funding you to provide essential journeys. You'll still see buses running everywhere. But coach operators have had it even harder. So tough old world. But that you play the hand that you're dealt. We're all born into different circumstances, different parents, different values. You play the hand that you're dealt. Get over it.